I now have the honor of introducing Congressman Gerry Connolly, who represents the 11th District in Virginia. Few lawmakers understand the value of public service better than Representative Connolly, who was elected to the House in 2008 after serving as chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. He has worked to protect and improve federal employee benefits and fought efforts to cut the size of the federal workforce. He serves on the House Budget Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. And most importantly, he's represented me personally at every level of government from the Providence District in Fairfax County to the U.S. House. So it's my pleasure to welcome Congressman Gerry Connolly.
Good afternoon. You know, I had a little struggle trying to get in the building. I guess they don't like Democrats too often coming into the Ronald Reagan building. I don't know. But the first time I ever came into this building, I had a good friend who was retiring from the Agency for International Development, and his retirement party was upstairs at the AID office, and I was running late as a member of Congress, you know, and I went in the wrong entrance, and I had to go through cavernous ways to try to find the right entrance. I finally found the right entrance. I'm getting real nervous about being late for the retirement party. And I go to the desk, and he said, well, you need an escort. And I said, well, they're all at the party. I mean, you can call up there, but I don't think anyone's going to answer the phone because they're, you know, in the conference room partying. And sure enough, he got no response. And I finally looked at him, and I said, you know, I am a member of Congress. Do you think this once you could trust me to go to the third floor without an escort? He said, you're a member? I said, yes. And so he said, well, let me make a call. So he gets on the phone, and I can't hear the conversation, but it's very animated. And he finally, after about a minute, he hangs the phone down and says, no, you need an escort. Welcome to the Ronald Reagan building, making it safe from members of Congress. It is great to be with you today and to extol excellence in government and public service. We live in an era where it has become fashionable, if not politically correct, to disparage public service. And that is not something I think is a good idea for a democracy. It's always a good idea not to like too much bureaucracy, and Americans have always had a healthy skepticism of that. It's always a good thing to be suspicious of authority a little bit. America was founded on a certain suspicion of authority, royal authority. But to despise our own government, to disparage public service, does an enormous disservice to the American people and to the people we serve. It is you, it is public servants who have made America a great country, who have provided some of the highest quality services on the face of the earth. One need only travel overseas to realize we should not and cannot take for granted the quality of public service we have in the United States. And for those of us in elective life who are charged with overseeing the government, it makes even less sense. And yet, politically, it has more than entered our political narrative. And I think at great expense. 47% of the existing federal workforce will be eligible for retirement over the next decade or so. Who will take their place? How will we reach the skilled work set of the future? How will we make public service attractive to the younger generation coming out of university if we have done everything in our power to denigrate it in words and in deeds? In this Congress, we're now on the 5th assault that I'm counting this year alone on federal workers. We have frozen pay for 2 years in a row, and we're looking at a third. That's $90 billion. When we finally reached a bipartisan compromise, remember that compromise at Christmas where Speaker Boehner finally put up the white flag on payroll tax extension and unemployment insurance, and to an empty chamber, the House finally passed a compromise bill to extend both. In the fine print was $15 billion in incoming federal workers changing the terms of the federal pension, raising costs, lowering benefits. Not to be outdone, when the transportation bill was put together, The entire transit section, for the first time ever, was financed not out of the Highway Trust Fund with its fair share, but out of the backs of federal workers, current federal workers, who would see their pension costs go up, what they pay into it, by as much as threefold, and their benefits go down. And then, of course, we're looking at other ways to take even more out of federal compensation to fund unrelated activity. A number of us voted against a bill recently, every single member of the National Capital Region, in protest for that and what it said. It's not okay. And I hope individually and collectively federal employees are going to speak up and be heard. Most federal employees do not live in the Washington, D.C. area. And it comes as news to many of my colleagues just how many federal employees and federal retirees live in their respective districts and what they do every day to protect the public. This is part of a broader narrative in the assault on the big, bad, horrible federal government, and the narrative is it cannot do anything efficiently, and frankly, the less seen about it, heard about it, and the less seen from it, the better. You know, if we want to stay competitive for the future, we need the federal government. From the land-grant university system to the transcontinental railroad, Abraham Lincoln, in the midst of the worst crisis in American history, the Civil War, still continued to look at research, to look at that partnership with the federal government on many levels, because he understood that we still had to be thinking about the future. Dwight D. Eisenhower, a Republican, understood the value of getting the federal government to champion the cause of the interstate highway system. Think about what the return on that investment has been. Aren't we glad a Republican president made that decision? And by the way, the legislation was carried by a Republican senator from Connecticut whose name was Prescott Bush. Today, those two, if they were alive and propounding the same, would be highly criticized in their respective party as big spending rhinos, as opposed to American visionaries who understood that America needed to be connected. The internet was a federal investment. GPS grew out of a federal investment. The protection of our pharmaceutical industry and new breakthroughs in pharmaceuticals are usually the result of that partnership between federal investments and the private sector. And much of the basic research has to be done in the public sector because the private sector is not willing to undertake the liability and the costs. And America has been the beneficiary of that partnership for many, many years. What you do each and every day is important to the future of this country. And the good news is most of the American public actually understands that, the rhetoric notwithstanding. I wanted you to know there are a number of us in Congress who are advocates for the federal worker, who believe in the dignity and nobility of public service and want that narrative to change for the sake of the country, for the sake of our future competitiveness, and for the sake of the constituents we serve. Thank you so much for what each and every one of you does. God bless you all.